Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when life seems to be coming to an end? That's exactly what I experienced. A near-death experience that changed everything in my life and still resonates within me like a divine calling. But before I tell you how I came to Jesus, I need to take you back to the beginning of this story, because that's where everything began to unfold. My name is Flávia Duarte. I'm 46 years old, and I work as a housekeeper. I never imagined that something extraordinary could happen to me. I always thought that miracles and divine encounters were things that happened to other people, those who were somehow more special. My routine was a mix of exhaustion and acceptance. I would wake up early, take 2 buses to get to work, clean other people's houses, with effort that often left my body worn out, and then return home to face more responsibilities. There was no room for dreams or deeper reflections on life. I believed in God, but my faith felt distant, almost mechanical. I prayed when things got tough, but I never explored my faith more deeply. It was a night like any other. My children were already asleep, and I took advantage of the silence to put my feet up for a few minutes before going to bed. My body ached, and my mind was filled with worries, overdue bills, health problems I had been ignoring, and the constant fear of not being able to manage everything. When I finally lay down, I felt a strange pressure in my chest. It wasn't exactly pain, but a discomfort I had never felt before. I thought it was exhaustion, or maybe something I ate. Instead, I was overcome by a suffocating sensation. My heart began to race erratically, and suddenly everything went dark. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember feeling pain. All I know is that one moment I was there, lying in my bed, and the next, I was gone. I woke up in a place that seemed beyond human comprehension, but I didn't know what that meant. Not at least. When the doctors arrived in my room hours later, they found out what had happened. I had suffered a heart attack while sleeping. My heart had simply stopped. The next morning, my children found me unconscious, and according to medical reports, I had been clinically dead for 6 minutes and 20 seconds. 6 minutes and 20 seconds might seem brief, right? But what I experienced during that short time changed everything I believed about life, death. That was how one of the most mysterious and transformative moments of my life began. But what happened while my body was lifeless? Where did I go? What did I see? Stay with me, because what I experienced was much more than just a loss of consciousness. It was the start of something divine. When everything went dark, I thought it was the end. There was no pain or fear, just a deep emptiness that seemed to engulf me completely. But before I could make sense of what was happening, I felt something different, as if my body was being pulled out of me. It was strange. I was there, in the room where it all happened, but I wasn't in my body. I could see everything around me with startling clarity. My own body lay motionless on the bed, pale, like an empty shell. I felt a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Was it really possible to be there, outside myself, and yet so aware? There was an amazing lightness. I no longer felt the weight of exhaustion or the pain in my chest that had woken me so suddenly. It was as if I were floating, yet fully present. I noticed details I hadn't seen before. The ceiling fan spun slowly, the curtain swayed with the breeze, and even the distant sound of a barking dog seemed sharper. Then, suddenly, something changed. A feeling of movement surrounded me, as if I were being pulled away from that place. There were no doors or windows, just a soft light that seemed to call me. I wasn't walking or running, but I moved with a fluidity I'd never known before. It was like an invisible force guiding me toward a place I didn't know, but somehow felt familiar. As I moved forward, the world around me shifted completely. The room disappeared, and I found myself surrounded by an immense light. It wasn't ordinary light like that from the sun or a lamp. It was something alive that wrapped me in an indescribable peace. I felt as if every part of me was enveloped in a love so profound that I could barely grasp it. In that moment, I realized something even more astonishing. I could feel, but not with my body. There were no hands to touch, no eyes to see. Yet the perception was so intense, it seemed to go beyond any human limit. As I took it all in, a memory flashed through my mind. My children. It was as if, for an instant, I was pulled back to reality. I thought about how they would cope without me, how my absence would affect their lives. But as soon as that worry surfaced, the same light surrounding me seemed to comfort me. It was like a silent voice saying, "It's all right, trust." And then something even more incredible happened. I realized I wasn't alone. I felt a presence beside me, something so strong and warm that it made all my anxiety disappear. It was as if I were being prepared for a meeting that would change everything. Suddenly, the light that surrounded me began to shift. It wasn't just light. It was something alive, pulsing. It felt as though each particle carried love, something I could only describe as absolute truth. Then, amid that radiant expanse, a figure began to take shape. At first I saw just an outline, a presence so majestic it made me want to fall to my knees, even though I had no knees to bend. Slowly the figure gained form, and I knew, even before fully seeing him, who was before me. Jesus! It wasn't just something I saw. I felt Jesus in every part of who I was. It was not a judging gaze, but one that welcomed me, as if saying, "I know you, Flavia. I have always been here. I didn't know what to do." Part of me wanted to run to him, embrace him, beg for forgiveness. But all I could do was stand there in front of him, completely overwhelmed with emotion, before I could say anything. Oh, it carried such deep peace that it seemed to dissolve every doubt and fear. Jesus extended his hand, as if inviting me to come closer. When he spoke, his voice was unlike any we hear on earth. It was as if each word resonated deep within me, filling my entire being with meaning and purpose. He said, "Flavia, you are here because there is something I need to show you." It was as if he had opened a window to the heavens. I witnessed something that words could never fully describe. It was a place of light, not just any light. Everything radiated a perfection that could only come from God. Jesus showed me people. Some were praying, others serving, and some immersed in deep worship. It was a realm of complete harmony where no one knew pain or sorrow. Then, with a calmness only he possesses, he explained, "This is the place I have prepared for those who follow the path I've laid out." But many still don't understand what that truly means. That's why you are here, Flavia. You will be a bridge between the celestial and the earthly. I didn't know how to respond. It all felt so overwhelming. Who was I to receive such a divine mission? A simple housekeeper, someone who had never fully grasped what it means to live by faith. Yet Jesus, with his compassionate gaze, seemed to see right through my thoughts. You don't have to be perfect, Flavia. I choose humble hearts to carry out the greatest works. What I'm about to share with you is important. I want you to carry this message to the world. As he spoke, I felt a mix of responsibility and honor. It was as if my life, mundane up until that moment, was being redefined by the one who created all things. And you, listening to this story, can you imagine what it would be like to stand before Jesus? Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and follow more transformative stories like this. You won't want to miss what's coming next. And it was there, in that very moment, that Jesus revealed something that not only changed my perspective, but holds a celestial truth for all of us. The message he entrusted to me is something you need to hear. When Jesus began to speak, it was as if each word came alive. I didn't just hear him. It was as if he were planting a seed of understanding directly in my heart. He looked at me with a love that seemed endless and said, "Flavia, there is something many don't understand, yet it's essential to drawing closer to the Father. Fasting." I fell silent, completely absorbed by his words. Fasting. I had heard of it, yes, but to me, it was always something distant. Sensing my confusion, Jesus continued, "Fasting is not merely abstaining from food. It's an act of surrender, a letting go. You give up what feeds the body to strengthen the soul. When you fast, Flavia, you quiet the noise of the world and invite God to speak more clearly. It's a way to align your will with the Father's will. He then reached out his hand and, in a symbolic gesture, showed me scenes from the Bible as if they were living images surrounding us. I saw Jesus in the desert, fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, facing temptation and demonstrating that spiritual strength can overcome any bodily weakness. "Do you see, Flavia?" he asked. "Fasting is not about empty sacrifice, but about connection. It is through fasting that you discover strengths you never imagined you had, and it is through it that many find the purpose God designed for their lives." I began to understand. It all made sense. Fasting wasn't just a religious ritual. It was a bridge between heaven and earth, a way to draw closer to divine love on a deeper level. Jesus then gave me a message that still resonates in my soul today. He said, "There are many who live in silence, who feel empty but don't know how to fill that void. You will be a voice for those people, Flavia. Teach them about the power of fasting, how it can transform lives and bring God's presence in ways they never imagined. You will be my messenger." I was speechless. How could I, such a simple woman, carry something so great? But before I could express my fear and doubt, Jesus reassured me with his gaze. "It's not about who you were, but who you will become. Fasting will be the path you teach, but the transformation will come through me. Trust me, Flavia, for I will be with you." He quoted Isaiah 58, a chapter I had only a vague familiarity with, but he brought it to life in that moment. He revealed the true meaning of the fast that pleases God. "Is not this the fast I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke." Those words ignited a fire within me. I realized that true fasting is not just physical but also spiritual, a practice that liberates, transforms, and draws people closer to God's love. Jesus then laid his hand on my shoulder and said, "Flavia, take this message to the world. Teach what real fasting is and show that through it, everyone can find their way to me. Your life will be a testimony of what divine power can do." In that moment, something inside me shifted. I knew my life would never be the same, but how could I return to my body and fulfill this mission? What happened when I woke up, and how did this experience change my life forever? Everything happened in an instant, yet it also felt as if I was leaving something eternal behind. Before I could fully embrace the peace and purpose Jesus had planted in my heart, I felt something pulling me back. It was as if an invisible force wrapped around me, pushing me toward a place I somehow recognized as my body. I didn't want to go. At that moment, it was perfect to be there with Jesus, feeling that indescribable peace. But he looked at me one last time and with a gentle smile said, "Go, Flavia, your mission begins now. I will be with you." In the blink of an eye, everything changed. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by a heavy sensation, as if I were being squeezed into a tight box. What had felt so light now felt unbearably dense. I could sense my heart beating again, a weak pulse, but enough to bring me back to reality. I opened my eyes and saw faces around me, doctors and nurses rushing, frantic voices shouting numbers and commands. I was back. Trying to describe what I felt at that moment is difficult. There was confusion, relief, but also a deep sadness. I longed to stay in that heavenly place, but deep down, I knew returning was part of a greater plan. The doctors said I had died. My heart had stopped for almost 7 minutes. My family was informed that the chances of my survival were very slim, and if I came back, I would likely have some after effects. But there I was, conscious, alive, and with a clarity I had never experienced before. For days, I remained silent. How could I explain what had happened? I was just Flavia, an ordinary housekeeper. How could someone like me have experienced something so extraordinary? When I saw them, something inside me changed. I understood that I had not come back just for myself. I embraced each of them with an intensity I had never felt before. The simple fact of being there, alive, with the chance to watch them grow was already a miracle. But it wasn't easy. The memories of that experience haunted me like a dream you just can't shake off. I would wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about the voice of Jesus, about the mission he had entrusted to me. But how could I begin? How could I talk about something so grand without sounding crazy? The first time I tried to share my experience was with my sister Clara. She had always been very religious, and I thought it would be easier to talk to her. But as I told her, I realized she was torn between curiosity and skepticism. "Flavia, are you sure this wasn't a dream? Or maybe something your mind created because of lack of oxygen?" Those words hurt me, but I understood. Even for me, it sometimes felt surreal. Over time, I found the courage to share my story with others. I started with close friends, then with members of the church I had sporadically attended in the past. Some people cried hearing my account, while others just looked at me with doubt. But each time I spoke, something incredible happened. It was as if he were right there beside me, reinforcing the message he had given me. And slowly, people began to listen. I knew it wouldn't be easy to carry a message like this. It never would be. But even through the difficulties, I felt an immense peace because I knew I was fulfilling God's will. Since the moment I returned to life, something inside me has changed forever. It wasn't just that I survived something that seemed impossible, but what I experienced there, before Jesus, transformed me into someone I barely recognized. Before, my life was so ordinary. I would wake up, go to work, take care of my family, but I lived as if everything was just routine, lacking much meaning. Now every little detail seemed to have a purpose. Every breath, every sunrise, every smile from my children carried a new weight, a new color. The greatest transformation, however, happened within me. I had never been very religious. I believed in God, of course, but from a distance, without going deeper. But after everything I went through, there was no longer any room for doubt. It was real. That's when I began to seek more about fasting, that practice Jesus had shown me so clearly. I read the Bible with a hunger I had never felt before, as if every word was a piece of heaven I longed to revisit. I studied Isaiah 58, the chapter he had mentioned, and I cried when I understood what it meant to fast in a way that pleases God. I realized that fasting wasn't just a personal practice, but a way to intercede for others, to break spiritual chains, and to bring God's presence closer. I started to practice it. At first it was difficult. My body protested, my mind wandered. But each time I felt a deeper connection with God. Over time I began sharing this practice with others. It wasn't about giving grand speeches or being perfect, but simply sharing what Jesus had shown me. I told my sister Clara, and to my surprise, she began fasting with me. Soon, more people joined in. Small groups started to form, and every testimony I heard reminded me of the mission that Jesus had given me. But that wasn't the only change. My perspective on life's hardships also transformed. Before, I complained about everything: the bills, the hard work, the daily struggles. Now, I see each challenge as an opportunity to draw closer to God. It's not that everything has become easier, but my perspective has completely changed. And maybe you're wondering, "Flavia, how can you live with such certainty after everything?" Now, I live to fulfill the mission He has given me. Every day, I ask God to use my life to touch others, just as He touched mine. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that transformation begins when we open our hearts to hear Jesus' voice. Maybe you're sitting there thinking your life has no purpose, that you're too small to be used by God. But let me tell you something. He sees you. He loves you and has greater plans than you can imagine. Before I finish, I want to share with you the verse that marked my transformation the most. Is not this the fast I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice? Isaiah 58:6. This is the essence of what Jesus taught me. Fasting isn't just for us, but to impact the world around us. If you've made it this far, thank you. Your presence here is proof that God is working in our lives, even when we don't realize it. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep following stories like this. Who knows? The next one might be yours. And never forget, Jesus is by your side, ready to transform your life. He's already called you.